So, Robert, we've talked about some of the more physical things like obesity and perhaps addiction. People would argue has a strong physical component. I want to go to psychology in a second, but first of all, what about something as strongly related to identity as, say, sexuality? The narrative in society, which is frankly one that I'm sort of not invested in, but one I go with, is that, if you're gay or straight or bi or whatever it is, that's 100% genetic. There is no environmental influence. How true is that?
Well, when this research, the first twin studies and then adoption studies were done on sexuality 30 years ago or so, that wasn't the prevailing view. I mean, it was more that it was a matter of lifestyle choices and how your mother treated you in the first few years of life. So the research coming out showing that there's genetic influence on it, not real high genetic influence, moderate genetic influence, that created quite a storm. And then when someone said they found a gene on the X chromosome that's related to that, which turns out not to be true, that really upped the ante a bit. So people were they were quite hostile to the idea, but the gay community liked it because, it wasn't just a lifestyle choice and they were making life difficult for their parents and other people or whatever. So it's interesting to hear you say that. You think if we did a survey now, most people would think that it's very highly heritable.
Well, I have no doubt that most people would answer that way, yeah.
Yeah. I worked at an adolescent treatment center where we had several boys who were gay, and they were almost in the treatment center because they were gay, and they created such problems in their life. This is back in the 70s. But their stories were, they just knew from early on.
Right.
And so I tend to agree with you, but it's a difficult thing to study because even now I think people aren't totally open about their sexuality, I think. But anyway, the data that exists, not surprisingly, suggests there's some genetic influence, but it's not at all 100% heritable. I mean, it's a long way from that. But there might be chance factors involved as well. And, one way to get at this is with identical twins, because that's what the twin study is about, comparing identical, called monozygotic twins. It's the same fertilized egg, so same sperm and egg combined to create this embryo, and it splits in the first few days of life. So these are genetically identical individuals. If you sequence them, they have the same DNA, both individuals. So to what extent are they different? And can we call it homosexuality?
Yeah,
okay. I have to worry about, I can't keep up with terms. But for identical twins, they're only, I think, about 60% concordant for homosexuality.
What does that mean, Robert, concordant?
They're the same. So if you find one identical twin male who's gay, what are the chances that the other identical twin are gay? And it's certainly not 100%.
Wow.
But then people say, but maybe if you grow up with someone who's people confuse you all the time if you're an identical twin. The easiest way to tell if a twin is identical or not is one question. When you were growing up, did people have trouble telling you apart?
Sure.
Because that aggregates a lot of characteristics, height, weight, hair color, which is all identical for identical twins. So it may be that by having this identical person around, maybe you forge a separate identity or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, there aren't any complex traits that are 100% heritable. So it doesn't surprise me that identical twins differ. I mean, they're not always the same for sexual preference.
Wow, that's really interesting.